New Folsom uncovered. The extreme violence they never showed the public, the file they weren't supposed to see. Before we dive into this, make sure you hit subscribe, tap the like button, and drop a comment right now, because what you about to hear was never meant to leave those prison walls. New Folsom State Prison, California's most fortified institution, was built to contain the men society feared the most. But on a cold January morning, the fortress cracked. It started quietly, almost too quietly, with a sealed incident report labeled Restricted Access, Level 4 only. Officer Dane Furlong was the first to see it. 12 years on the job, hardened by daily tension, he thought he'd seen every kind of chaos New Folsom could produce. But this file, it wasn't like the others. It wasn't a disciplinary write-up or a routine emergency log. It was a summary of something that had happened the night before, something the prison administration refused to classify. The report mentioned no weapon, no fight, no explanation, only that an inmate in the maximum security wing had been found unresponsive near the far end of cell block C, with no sign of struggle and no camera footage to explain how. The cameras should have captured everything, but the feed for that hallway flickered out for 7 minutes. And that was all it took. When Dane asked his supervisor, Lieutenant Hargrove, for clarification, the answer came without hesitation. Don't dig into this. It's been handled. Handled. That word was always a warning in New Folsom. Later that same morning, Sergeant Lila Moreno, one of the few officers who still believed in reporting things honestly, cornered Dane in the break room. Her face looked tense, like she'd been carrying a weight all night. "You saw the file, right?" she asked. He nodded. "You know they're not telling the whole story." He nodded again. "Then you also know something is happening in C Block that they don't want on record." Lila had been tracking unusual events in the wing for months. Quiet transfers, sudden cell reassignments, unexplained isolation orders. It wasn't violent incidents that alarmed her. It was the silence. Problems at New Folsom normally came with noise, doors slamming, alarms blaring, radios exploding with calls. But whatever was happening now had no sound at all. A week earlier, one inmate had requested to be moved out of C Block. He didn't ask for protective custody. He didn't accuse anyone. He simply said, "I can't sleep down there anymore." When asked what he meant, he shook his head and whispered, "You're not listening. It's not the inmates." Most officers laughed it off, but Lila didn't. The prison's administration seemed almost too eager to keep staff away from certain areas. Routine walkthroughs were cut short. Officers were rotated out without explanation. Even the maintenance team complained that they weren't being allowed to fix electrical problems affecting the cameras. And then there was the third thing, the unmarked door at the very end of the hallway in C Block. For years, it had been used as a storage room for broken equipment. But lately, the door had been padlocked with a new chain and labeled "Authorized Personnel Only," even though no one could say who authorized it. Rumors started spreading, quietly, cautiously, that the room wasn't storage anymore, that inmates were being taken inside for reasons not written in official logs, that whatever happened inside was meant to stay off the books. Dane ignored rumors. They got people in trouble. But after 12 years at New Folsom, he could sense when something didn't add up. This felt like the beginning of something bigger. 2 days after the first report, another file came through. Same wing. Same unexplained camera failure. Another inmate found collapsed in a hallway with no witnesses, no sound, and no evidence. This time, Dane didn't keep quiet. He confronted Lieutenant Hargrove in the administrative corridor. "Sir, the camera outages match the exact same pattern. Same number of minutes. Same hallway." Hargrove didn't look surprised. In fact, he looked prepared. "Drop it," the lieutenant said. "That's an order." Dane didn't respond. Not because he was intimidated, but because he finally understood something. Hargrove wasn't trying to hide incompetence. He was trying to hide intent. That night, Dane and Lila met in the staff parking lot. She handed him a document, an old one, outdated, written in faded ink. Before New Folsom was upgraded, she said, there were experiments on inmate management, unofficial protocols, techniques they tried to bury. Some of the older officers still talk about them, but only when they think no one's listening. Dane flipped through the file. Most pages were scratched out, but one line remained untouched: control through isolation, behavioral conditioning, subsection C. Subsection C, C block. The hallway, the cameras, the unmarked room. Everything pointed to the same location. As they stood between rows of silent cars, the lights of the prison towers sweeping across the lot like slow-moving search beams, Dane asked Lila the question that had been sitting in his mind for days. "What do you think is happening in there?" Lila hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because she wasn't sure she wanted to say it aloud. Finally, she whispered, "I think they revived one of the old protocols. And whatever they're doing in that room, it's not meant to be seen." Dane felt a chill crawl up his spine. For the first time in years, he was afraid, not of the inmates, but of the people running the place. And the fear became absolute when Lila leaned in and added, "Because the inmate who was found in the hallway? He wasn't assigned to C block, not anymore. His cell had been empty for a week." Dane froze. The inmate who collapsed shouldn't have been there at all. But before he could ask another question, Lila said, "You're not going to believe who unlocked his cell." She handed him a photo from the security log. And when Dane saw the face in the image, everything inside him stopped. It was an officer, someone he trusted, someone who should have had no reason to be there. And the timestamp showed they entered 5 minutes before the cameras went dark. Dane looked up in shock. Lila whispered, "This goes deeper than you think." Detective Marcus Hale didn't believe in coincidences. Not in New Folsom. Not in a place where secrets grew like weeds and every inmate seemed to know something they shouldn't. By the time the sun rose over the razor wire horizon, he and Agent Sarah Whitfield were already inside the administration wing, staring at a stack of classified reports nobody in the public was ever meant to see. The files were old, some typewritten, others handwritten, many stamped with red ink, restricted. And every report came from the same location, C Block Lower Tier, the unit long rumored to house the most dangerous inmates in California. But what bothered Marcus was not the content of the reports. It was the dates. All of the incidents lined up perfectly with the timeline of the night Terrence, T-Knife, Hale disappeared from the security footage. Sarah pushed her glasses higher on her nose as she flipped through another folder. "These aren't normal disciplinary logs. Look at this. No names. Just inmate numbers. No witness statements. Everything is half redacted. It's like someone was documenting something, but didn't want anyone to understand what." Marcus crossed his arms. "That's because whoever wrote these reports wasn't documenting incidents. They were documenting patterns." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Patterns of what?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He pulled out one report marked confidential, internalize only. It contained a crude sketch of the lower tier. 5 cell numbers were circled. The same 5 cell numbers that had appeared in every report going back 12 years. Something was happening inside those 5 cells. Something organized. Something the administration had tried to bury. He looked up at Sarah. 5 inmates linked across a decade, all moving through the same unit. All mysteriously transferred or released after incidents. He tapped the page. This wasn't random violence. It was coordinated. She stared at him, stunned. "Are you suggesting the inmates were running something inside the prison?" "No," he replied. "I'm suggesting someone on the outside was using inmates on the inside." Before Sarah could respond, a sharp knock hit the office door. Both turned. Captain Ross stood in the doorway, his face tight, his jaw clenched. He looked like a man who'd been awake for days. "I hear you've been digging," Ross said quietly. "Digging into things that aren't your concern." Marcus exchanged a look with Sarah. Something about Ross's tone wasn't a warning. It was a message. Ross stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Whatever you think you're about to uncover, drop it. C Block Lower Tier has nothing to do with your missing inmate. Stick to the official report. Don't make trouble." Marcus's voice was calm but firm. "You didn't even ask what we found." Ross sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Because I already know. Those files shouldn't have been in this office. Someone slipped them in without authorization. If administration thinks you requested them, you'll be off this case. And if the department thinks you opened them, you might lose more than your badge." Sarah looked at him sharply. "Why would administration hide 12 years of incident reports?" Ross flinched. A tiny, almost invisible movement, but enough to confirm he knew more than he wanted to say. "I am telling you this as someone who actually cares whether you walk out of here alive," Ross said. "Drop the lower tier investigation. Focus on the missing inmate. That's it." He stepped back, opened the door, then paused without turning around. "And whatever you do, stay out of C Block tonight." He left without another word. The office fell silent. Marcus leaned against the filing cabinet. He knows. Maybe not everything, but he knows enough to be scared. Sarah nodded. which means we're closer than we thought. For a moment, neither spoke. The prison hummed around them. Distant footsteps, the metallic echo of doors slamming, the soft buzz of fluorescent lights. The atmosphere felt charged, like the building itself was holding its breath. Sarah finally asked, "What's our next move?" Marcus sighed. "We need to see C block lower tier." That's exactly what Ross told us not to do. Exactly. That night, the investigative team walked the main corridor with a correctional escort, but Marcus and Sarah drifted behind, memorizing every turn, every hallway, every security camera and blind spot. When the escort paused to investigate a malfunctioning door alarm, Marcus gave Sarah a small nod. Now, they slipped through an unmarked service corridor and made their way toward the restricted wing. The air grew colder, the lights dimmer. Cameras were sparse, too sparse. Most had been removed or turned away. Marcus whispered, "Someone doesn't want this area monitored." They reached the steel door leading into the lower tier. The keypad security lock blinked red. Sarah pulled a laminated card from her jacket, a clearance badge she'd recovered earlier during a confusing equipment shuffle. "Let's hope this works." She tapped the card. The light turned green. The lock clicked. The door opened slowly, revealing a long, echoing hallway lined with 5 cell doors, the same 5 marked on the diagram. Only one thing was wrong. Every cell was empty. No beds, no storage, no personal items, just concrete, metal bars, and a faint smell of disinfectant. Sarah stepped inside. "Where are the inmates who used to be here?" Marcus walked to the farthest cell. Something scratched into the concrete caught his eye. He crouched, brushing dust away to reveal a carved message beneath. 3 words. "Still in here." His breath hitched. Sarah whispered, "What does that mean?" Marcus didn't answer. His mind raced. Either the message was a warning or a confession. Before he could investigate further, a loud slam echoed behind them. The door to the tier had shut. Then a second sound followed, the unmistakable click of the lock engaging from the outside. Sarah's eyes widened. "Someone just locked us in." Marcus rushed to the door, pulling the handle. It didn't budge. The hallway fell silent. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and with a low hum, a speaker crackled to life above them. An old intercom, and used for years. A voice they both recognized whispered through the static. "Captain Ross, you should have listened." A pause. Then another voice, deeper, unfamiliar, and far more unsettling. "Now that you're in the lower tier, let's see if you can make it out." The intercom clicked off. Sarah stared down the hallway, her voice trembling but controlled. "Marcus, what is happening?" Marcus slowly backed away from the locked door, eyes fixed on the empty cells. "Someone didn't want us to find the truth," he whispered. "And now, they're not planning to let us leave." The truth buried beneath New Folsom for a long moment. Marcus and Sarah stood frozen inside the locked lower tier, the echoes of the intercom fading into a suffocating silence. New Folsom's concrete walls had always felt cold, but down here the air carried something heavier, the weight of secrets that had been buried for more than a decade. Sarah pulled out her flashlight and scanned the walls. Ross didn't sound forced. He willingly locked us in. Marcus nodded, which means he's not just covering something up, he might be part of it. A loud metallic clang echoed from the far end of the hallway. Marcus immediately drew back, scanning the shadows. Another clang, this one closer. The sound wasn't random. It was patterned, deliberate, like coded knocking. Sarah stepped closer. "Marcus, that's coming from the ventilation system." The knocking repeated, 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. Marcus stiffened. "That's a signal inmates used years ago when they wanted to warn each other." Sarah shined her light on the vent cover. Dust, rust, but underneath, fresh scratch marks. Something moved behind the vent. Then a voice whispered through the metal, strained and raspy. "Is someone out there?" Sarah jumped back. Marcus leaned closer. "Who are you?" There was a painful cough. Then the voice answered. "Name's Carter. I've been stuck down here for weeks. They moved me off the records." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. "Moved you off the records?" "That's impossible." "No," Carter whispered. "That's exactly what they do. That's what lower tier was made for." Marcus exchanged a grim look with Sarah. "What is this place?" Carter hesitated. "Not a punishment block. Not a high-violence unit. It's a testing ground." "For what?" Sarah asked. Carter coughed again, voice shaking. "Whoever runs the program, they handpick inmates. Ones nobody will notice if they go missing. They pull them down here for behavioral studies, but it's not what they claim. It's a recruitment system. Marcus's stomach tightened. Recruitment for what? Them, Carter whispered. The ones who've been controlling half the violence in this prison for years. Not inmates. Not gangs. People higher up. People who decide what happens and when. Sarah swallowed hard. You're talking about staff. A long pause. Then Carter said, not just staff. Administrators. Wardens. Even outsiders. Marcus felt the air in the cell grow heavier. As much as he wanted to dismiss Carter's claims as paranoia, too many pieces of the puzzle suddenly fit. Sarah was the first to speak. Why you? Why'd they put you here? Because I saw something, Carter whispered. Something I wasn't supposed to. They wiped my file. I don't exist anymore. And they'll do the same to you if you stay. Before Marcus could reply, the intercom crackled again. This time, there was no voice, only the sound of footsteps. Slow, steady, getting louder. Someone was coming toward the door. Sarah stepped back into the shadow of a cell doorway. Marcus did the same. The locking mechanism clicked. The steel door creaked open. Captain Ross stepped inside, carrying a flashlight and a folder tucked under his arm. His face was pale, tense, almost conflicted. Marcus, Sarah, come out, he said quietly. Neither detective moved. Ross sighed heavily. I'm not here to hurt you. I am here because it's too late to protect you from the people who run this program. So you need to hear the truth, all of it, before they erase you from the system too. Marcus finally stepped out. Sarah followed, staying close. Ross set the folder on the floor. Open it. Marcus knelt and flipped it open. Inside were dozens of documents, untouched by redaction. Photos, logs, transfer orders, all detailing the lower tier program. Sarah scanned the pages. So Carter was telling the truth. Ross exhaled shakily. More than you know. This program started as a psychological behavioral study meant to reduce violence. But the people above me twisted it into a tool. They used inmates to control other inmates. They manipulated conflicts. They directed who got transferred, who got privileges, who disappeared. Marcus clenched his jaw. Why didn't you stop it? Ross's voice cracked. Because I tried. I tried years ago. And they buried me just like they tried to bury Carter. Only difference is, I did what they asked to stay alive. Sarah stepped closer. Then why help us now? Ross's shoulders sagged. Because they don't want to cover up anymore. They want a clean slate. That means everyone who knows the truth, including me, is disposable. A chilling realization washed over Marcus. They're coming. Ross nodded. You have maybe 10 minutes before they seal this tier permanently. Marcus grabbed the folder and pulled Sarah toward the door. We need to get out and get this to the Attorney General. But Ross didn't move. Ross, come with us. He shook his head slowly. Even if I walk out of here, they'll find me. But if you get those files out, maybe this place can finally be exposed for what it is. For the first time since they entered New Folsom, Ross looked at peace. Go, he whispered. Now. Marcus didn't argue. He and Sarah ran toward the exit corridor, the echoes of the lower tier stretching behind them like a closing chapter of darkness. But as they reached the end of the hallway, the intercom blared again, a final message. Lower tier lockdown in 30 seconds. Marcus pulled Sarah faster. They cleared the final doorway, just as heavy steel barriers slammed shut behind them. The lights flickered, the alarms blared, and the lower tier, the hidden world beneath New Folsom, disappeared behind reinforced steel, sealed as if it had never existed. Hours later, Marcus and Sarah emerged from the prison with Ross's folders secured in a chain of custody case, escorted by federal investigators who had been called in. As dawn stretched across the parking lot, Sarah looked at Marcus. Do you think Ross made it? Marcus stared at the prison's towering walls. I think, whatever happened down there, he finally stopped running. A quiet moment passed. Then Marcus opened the case and stared at the evidence. Enough to bring down a network that had controlled New Folsom from the shadows for years. Sarah smiled faintly. This is going to change everything. Marcus nodded. And after this case goes public, people will realize how much they never knew. He looked into the camera mounted on the dash of their cruiser. A quiet reminder that this story wasn't just theirs anymore. If you thought this was intense, he said softly, almost to himself, wait until you hear what happened at the next prison. Sarah smirked. Then we better get ready. Marcus started the engine. And with the evidence secured, the sun rising, and the shadows of New Folsom finally exposed, they drove away. leaving behind a fortress of secrets that would no longer stay buried. Like, subscribe, and comment if you want more intense prison documentaries and true crime breakdowns. Your engagement helps this video reach millions and supports new content weekly.